Awesome, great, glorious day it is. This is the day the Lord has made, and indeed we shall rejoice and be glad in it. I think by now you should be able to know that intro. Yeah, so hopefully you've been enjoying the previous episodes of the podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Remember, we are all about informing, transforming, and inspiring. So today we have an exciting guest, a wordsmith, yeah?
Wow.
Yeah, so Musenga Katongo is an award-winning creative entrepreneur, writer, storyteller, and founder of the arts platform Color Culture, whose vision is to become a globally recognized leader in African storytelling. He is also a full-time international and local poetry slam champion, TEDx performer who has achieved feats such as being the first non-Zimbabwean to win a poetry slam held in Zimbabwe, and the first African to win the Leith versus the World Slam Championship in Scotland. Musenga has also represented Zambia on multiple occasions at art festivals in Zimbabwe and England, which have garnered him attention on the global scene with an exclusive interview with BBC Radio. He also co-wrote and produced the latest Zambian animated short film called Twaano that explored how mental health evolved in Zambian history, and his long list of accomplishments can go on and on to drop your jaw. Well, his bio was initially like 8 pages.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Just, we had to give the detail, just
I was shocked reading that. I'm like, wow. Will I have the opportunity to? Because look, it will feel just like it's a whole book.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess just trying to showcase the stuff I've been up to. So, and it's kind of hard to pick. Like, okay, should I remove that? Okay, let me remove this.
Well,
so,
look,
yeah.
I guess it's like, well, this is a podcast arrangement, so I think we can read the whole thing. But
sure, I feel you.
But in terms of like context, depending where it is going, you're just like, I'll maintain this info, I'll leave out this info, and yeah. Welcome to the Umubanga podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Look, I think the last time I saw you was at Alliance Francaise, and I remember, I think the university I'm at was having like a film screening in partnership with the Alliance Francaise, and yeah, I know you're a resident poet there, like
something like that. Alliance Francaise was one of the partners for Color Culture.
Okay.
So we worked together very frequently. It is an open space for artists and creatives. So yeah, that's why I would be seen there most of the time.
Awesome. Look, somebody is watching this for the first time and they're wondering who's this guy with all these accolades, with all these happening. The funny thing about Zambia is that a lot of people in the background are doing big, amazing stuff, and they do not get the limelight or the spotlight Who's Musenga?
Well, I like to just describe myself as a storyteller.
Okay.
Like all of that stuff, just bring it down into me being a storyteller, And the reason I say that is because ever since I was like 9 years old, when I was in the 4th grade, I've been writing stories,
Okay.
I started out writing short stories. Then I discovered hip hop, started writing rap lyrics. After that, I discovered poetry. I started writing spoken word poetry. And then from there, I just started learning more and more about how stories can be told through multiple mediums. And I think that's when I now decided to say, like, look, I'm not one person who wants to box himself to say, like, look, I'm only going to use one medium in order to communicate or tell a story. I'll use whatever mediums are available or I can reach out to so that I can, tell a story. So in the end, I'm a storyteller.
Okay. So look, somebody's like, super eloquent. Was it something which was developed in the household or when you were in primary school?
One thing that I really am very grateful for is the environment I've grown up in that, most people will be like, no, in Zambia, your parents will be like, no, you can't do this, be a lawyer and all that stuff. I think, obviously, my parents were very, I don't want to use the word strict. They'll be a guiding light to say, like, look, you like this stuff, but make sure, you finish school, make sure you do the important stuff, make sure that you're settled and all that stuff. But I always felt like I've had a free room to be myself. So, when you're a kid, I really loved Rumba music. I would dance at the parties and they wouldn't stop me. You know what I mean? Yeah. I really loved, as I said, writing. And till this date, I have no idea where I was getting the exercise books to write, but because I didn't have money as a kid, I'm like, where was the money coming from? But I had the books. So I would write and just write all these different stories, and I would rap and I would be asking my sisters like, yo, sing the chorus on this thing,
So what would spark the imagination? Was it based off what you were watching, what you were exposed to?
I think I've always been this kind of person. And even to date, when I really like something, I have this urge to create something, maybe not necessarily similar or like the same, but I just have this inspiration to create something of my own. So when I was a kid, I would watch a commercial maybe of toys or something on the screen. I would watch my favorite cartoon back then, Ben 10, and I would be like, I like this story. What can I do with this? And my way of expressing how much I loved something like that, get an exercise book, write my own version of Ben 10. And, as I grew up, eventually I would now just be able to tell my own stories and come up with my own ideas, but still inspired by things which I was exposed to. So I think, that's what would spark that imagination. So growing up, there was always that freedom for me to express myself in those ways, while still remembering like, look, you're in primary school, make sure you get good grades. You're in secondary, make sure you get good grades. You're in university, make sure you get good grades. And so there was all of that. There was all of that.
So what did you study university?
Business administration.
Interesting. And then, so at some point in your primary or secondary, was there like an aspect of you maybe taking literature or something like creative writing or maybe art?
Nope. Purely passion, purely...
So it was just going to YouTube University and...
Not really, because I think YouTube, I only started like maybe being more serious about like watching stuff on YouTube and learning from that. Maybe that should have been maybe like my first year of university. Before that, I was just winging it, I guess, because I don't really have much recollection of like, I went to learn this. I think what I would say helped is maybe the English classes in high school, where your teachers are telling you to write compositions. I remember in high school, there was one of the teachers who would tell us like over the holiday, write 30 compositions. And for me, I'm like, 30 compositions, sure. So I'd write the stories. He never marked them. But anyway, I would write them and, submit the books and stuff. So I guess maybe even my high school had a role to play in, developing that aspect of me.
Side note, what was your highest mark in your composition writing?
Probably 10 out of 10 or something.
Awesome. It's a rare occurrence getting a 10 out of 10 in composition, yeah?
It's a guess, probably 9, but I don't recall ever getting very low grades in compositions.
Okay. It means that your writing game was on point. You could lie your way to...
Yeah, true. I think English only became wild when I was in 10th grade. That's when I realized like, you can speak English, but then when you have rewrites, it's like, no, we write this starting with not only.
No sooner had.
You know what I mean? So, I think all of those things kind of just played around to kind of just help me in my development. And something really grateful for.
So when did you graduate from university?
2021.
2021. So... at what point did you now decide to say, hey, I'll take this storytelling to the next level? I will even compete. So maybe like a brief rewind. Were you even like performing at school beforehand?
So I was performing in high school, like in fact in primary school as well. So my first ever performance was at a school assembly in grade 5. It's cute, your kids doing like this rap song, and it was something else. But
you still remember it?
Yes, but I feel like you asked me to do it.
No, I won't. I just wanted to know if you still remember it.
I remember it very well, actually. Yeah. So there was that. Then at my high school, there were always these like celebrations. Like when there's a particular public holiday, the day before, would be given like 2 hours as the school to like put together a showcase. So you have people who do poetry, dance, rap, singing, all of them having an opportunity to showcase their talents. And for me, that was a really big part of my story in terms of developing my skills and developing my passion for, the arts and the like, because I wasn't just going to school to learn and to, pass and do whatever I was supposed to do there, but you get to express yourself, and I was also in an environment where a lot of my friends were cheering me on, like they'll be like, oh, you're a really good rapper. Oh, you're a really good poet. So it really did encourage me. So high school did play a very big part in, forming the person I am today.
Okay. Look, so in that space of high school, now at what point did you switch now to say, I'll do this now?
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it was probably after high school, like when I was a school leaver, like just the year after. I was in this group called Conquest, with the three of us from high school, Jolesia Hakasenke and Walia Milunga. So we're friends in high school and we're still friends today.
I haven't seen Walia in like a long time, eh?
Bro? I know he's busy being a lawyer. Shout out to you, Walia. So so we're close buds then, still close buds now. So like we would rap and do poetry together. And then after high school, we're like, yo, let's see what we can do about this with this talent and gift we have. So I remember December 2015, we had inboxed Bittersweet Poetry. Like, no, we do poetry. Can you help us? Like, can you give us a platform? Yeah. And then they're like, okay, show up at Mulungushi Conference Center for the slam.
Yeah,
like an hour before.
The Tomaside rooms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that was 2016. So it's like, no, that was 2015, December. So like, no, come an hour before. So we met at Arcades when Arcades was Arcades, with that before fountain and stuff.
Yeah.
So we're there rehearsing, practicing, like, oh, this is our big break, Then it started raining. Like, oh, dear, how are we going to get there? So it was raining heavily and the time was like, everything was just crazy. So we had to like pass through Acacia Park, go around, and it's really like we're getting soaked all the way to Mulungushi. And for me, that day just shows me like we really wanted to meet these guys. We didn't say, ish. Oh, and the reason we passed through Acacia is because there was like a flood by the bus stop.
It always gets flooded there.
So when we reached, we rapped, we did our poetry in front of Mwape Mumba, who is the co-founder of Bittersweet. Yep. And he was like, okay, I'll get back to you guys. I'm even like, nothing's going to happen. And like a couple of weeks later, he hit up Walia and then we formed a group together. And then he started supporting us, helped us with our first single, which we recorded with Gio. And from there, it was now just doing music together, doing poetry together, and just, growing together as well. So I think that's where I would say the switch came. So
now at what point, so that was even the time you now competed in the slams?
So that was, 2016, doing music and everything. 2017, December is when I auditioned to be part of the Bittersweet Slam. And that's when I got to participate. I remember inviting a couple of people to support me. I invited my sister, different people and everything. Who came just like, no, we're just there to support him. We don't know if you win. We're just here for him. And I won. And I remember one of them admitting like, we didn't think you'd win. We were just there for you. But that was the time when I got to be part of my first slam. And I remember that day, like prior to that, I rehearsed like crazy. Like I got the themes, I wrote my poems, and I rehearsed like a madman. Like before I go to the venue, I'm rehearsing. I reached the venue, rehearsing. Then when I wanted to watch one of the poems, one of the performances, Destro, pulled me aside. He's like, go and rehearse. I remember that very clearly. And so I didn't watch anyone else's performance. So you were
competing as well with Destro?
No. He was just there to watch. Okay. So I went to the side and I was just rehearsing and then go in front, do my thing, and carried the day.
So I know you rebranded later on.
Yes.
Because I do remember your name back then was Messenger. Yeah.
So I was going by Messenger from like grade 9. From grade 9 all the way until 2021. So grade 9 was like 2012. So 2021, I decided to now start using my real name. And I remember it was more or less like a battle, which I had personally. And my mentor, Steve Mwale, had given me that advice, like, you should probably use your real name and stuff. And I was just be like, yeah, sure. I was going to do it, Then after some time, I started noticing certain things where you're caught somewhere. Like I remember one of the things that made me really make the decision was when I got to be part of the presidential poetry competition by Edgar Lungu. And then I was asked like for my name. And I didn't want to give them Messenger. I'm like, they won't take me seriously, So let me use my real name for this one. And it just showed me like, why do you feel this way about this name? Like you feel like people won't take you seriously, but if you use your real name, people take you more seriously and stuff. But then I think also it was like, what do I want to be remembered for? And I feel like that experience was like a catalyst. It's like, if you really want to be remembered as you and for your name, then probably go with that particular name. Just go with your real name. So just before I did the TEDx performance, I said, look, I'm now Musenga Katongo. Let's go with that from this point forward.
So how far did you go with the presidential poetry?
Oh, I came out second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A lot has happened in Zambia.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like a lot has happened that you even forget that such things even happen.
And it's not in the bio, you see? I moved it. So that's one page out. It would have been 9 pages.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome stuff. Look, you did the Be Remembered project, which as well led to you having a book.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. So walk us through the project and you actually, let's go back. So which church were you with originally?
I was Catholic.
Catholic?
Yes.
Okay. So meaning your whole family as well is still Catholic. So when you did the project, were you still Catholic or you had changed churches?
Be remembered, that was 2016, I believe. No. That was 2018. Yeah. So at that time, I was in a space where I wasn't necessarily with a particular church. I was like, okay.
Wherever you're called to perform.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And also there were just certain personal, how would I say, reservations I had with the doctrines that I was, learning from the Catholic Church and the like. So I was in a transition of trying to see where exactly I could now start congregating. So I think at that time, I didn't necessarily have a church to say like, okay, this is my church.
Yeah.
So at that time, I used to say I'm non-denominational. Yeah, this is the simplest thing I can say.
Accountable to none.
I mean, it was that type.
Okay.
So yeah. So that project actually is a very personal project, because in 2016, I lost my dad, and I lost him in circumstances which were very, it was very sudden. It's like the previous day I was with him, we're doing some errands, we're chatting, telling stories. I remember we were even talking about politics and stuff. So I'm like, yo, everything's all right. Then the following, I think that evening, he was talking about feeling a type of way, and then he was taken to the hospital. Then in the middle of the night, there was something that happened. Long story short, he passed away. So for me, it's like, yo, you're fine just here. What happened? You know what I mean? And I remember how that particular instance kind of made me realize, like, look, life is definitely very short. So imagine the circumstances where you are here today, you're gone tomorrow. Like, what would you be remembered for if something like that happened? So I kind of went on to this tangent where I started meditating more on life and death and stuff. And I was like, how old was I? I was like 18, I think. And then I wrote a short poetry anthology called Memento Mori, which is Latin for remember you die.
Yep.
So I wrote 10 poems, which were all based on my experience or based on the thoughts which I had and everything. So after I did Memento Mori, I released it and everything. I started thinking more about the whole thing. And then I decided to say, like, look, let me do an audio project about this, asking young people, like, yo, what will you be remembered for, So that's when I did Be Remembered 1 with Destro and Ziase. I recorded it with Josh, the artist. Then after some time, I was like, okay, this book, Memento Mori, I still have ideas. You know what I mean? So I wrote 20 more poems and put them in a book called Clocks and Candles. And one of those poems, which is in the book, is called Job's Tears. where I literally account for everything that happened on the night when my dad passed away, all up to the point when I had a very honest conversation with God, Yeah, very honest. You know what I mean? And I remember actually reciting that poem at the Bittersweet Poetry Slam, where I was literally just airing out my anger and everything.
So that's the one.
Sorry?
That's the one which you won with.
There were 3 rounds. It was the one that helped me get to the final round.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wrote that whole poem, that whole ordeal and everything, and put it in my book, Clocks and Candles. Some issues with the publisher, which led to it being released only 4 years later. Long story. I'll not get into that. So that's how I only released it to the public. Should be 2022. Yeah. That's when people could be able to purchase it and the like. So with that book, I went into Be Remembered 2 and then Be Remembered 3. And Be Remembered 1 was more or less asking the question, what would happen if you were forgotten? Be Remembered 2 was asking, what will our generation be remembered for? And then Be Remembered 3 was now more personal, like, what will I be remembered for? So, yeah, and I'm in the headspace to do Be Remembered 4, we'll see. But I think that's pretty much where my mind was at with those projects.
Okay. You had a TEDx presentation. I think I've applied twice.
I feel you. It's all good. Yeah.
I think the time will come, but not now.
The application is now, so give it a shot.
I'll give it a shot again. I'll give it a shot. I need to come up with an authentic idea. And so the TEDx presentation, which as well later on led you to now working with the BBC. And how did that come about?
So also, that was, I think, my second attempt. So I know where you're coming from. So I applied with the idea of a walking museum. So let's see. In 2019, I started Color Culture. And the whole premise behind Color Culture was to tell African stories, because I came to learn about so many African stories and so many Zambian stories, actually, to be specific, that we just don't know about, you know what I mean? And how our history is so rich. We have so much to talk about, so much to tell, but then we don't necessarily look into it, you know what I mean? So I decided to found Color Culture and then look into that particular agenda. So even with the TEDx performance, I was working very closely with the Women's History Museum at the time, which is founded by Sambayonga and Mulenga Kapwepwe. So with my work with them, I got to be exposed to so much more about Zambian culture, history, and the like, and say, like, guys, we have so much that we can tell stories about. And so I applied with the idea of how about we look into how Zambian culture and history can be part of our everyday, what's this process in. When you look at things like architecture, when you look at how business can be conducted, when you look at how different things in society can be, looked into, instead of just limiting our history to, just like wedding ceremonies or to fashion, like, oh, I'm wearing a chitenge shirt, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Or I felt like there's so many ways we can apply it in different aspects. So it even excites me when I hear about how, there's Kalindrila now, where you get this traditional sound and mix it with the modern sound and the like. So that was basically the idea of my TEDx performance. So within that poem, it's basically a conversation between an African chief and a diplomat, and how they're having this conversation around the place of culture in their, in their decision making and the like. So I think that's generally the idea behind my TEDx performance, of how can we be able to look into our culture and not box it away in a museum, like, oh, everything to do with Zambian history, slap it in a book, put it in a building, it stays there. But no, how can it come alive and be involved in our music, in our films, in our storytelling, in different aspects of our art and stuff like that, so that we can have our authentic identity showcased to the world? Because the truth of the matter is, you have everything that we consume, literally just people showcasing their identity to you. You know what I mean? When you have hip hop, it's American culture showing their identity to you. So how about we also showcase our own authentic Zambian identity to the world by looking into the things that make us who we are, by, diving into our history, learning a little bit about it and showcasing it. So that was the idea.
Dope. So that's so the BBC had seen that and then decided to get in touch with you.
So with that, it was now an issue of networks, because I was working with a Zimbabwean poetry platform called Page Poetry Alive. So in working with them, one of the things that popped up was how they were connected to the BBC and were like, look, we have this particular these guys are interested in your work because of the whole networking thing and them being exposed to my stuff. So that's how I got to work with them on two fronts. I performed at the what was that? The BBC Contain Strong Language Festival. Yes. That was a festival which was in the UK in England. And then there was also the BBC Radio. So they wanted to basically get more of the idea around my TEDx performance. So that's how that went.
Okay. So speaking of Zimbabwe, you went there and hammered the Zimbabweans.
Okay, sure. I've got Zimbabwean friends, so I'm not going to say that.
So I guess it's from the same connection with the Zimbabwe poetry team.
Not necessarily.
So how did that happen? Did you just in tennis, there's the wildcard arrangement where they just pick at random somebody from another nation to compete?
Nah, so with that one, I was working with Word Smash Poetry.
Okay.
So they were sending how many were 5 of us to Zimbabwe to participate in the Ntwasa Poetry Slam. That was 2019. Yeah, in 2019. So I went there and I was with other Zambian poets and we participated in the Ntwasa Poetry Slam. And I won.
Yeah. Well, look, in your bio, it says that you also competed in Scotland and won. I think that, I remember it made some waves.
Oh, yes, it did.
Yeah, online. And then it died. Usual, because something scandalous happened and then,
You know how these things go.
Yeah, so walk us through the journey of you competing in this international poetry.
So with Scotland, I was part of the, what was it called? Emerging Voices. Okay, I was part of a program that was taking place in Edinburgh. So I was in Scotland for 3 months. And whilst I was in that, in Edinburgh, I had different activities which I had to do around the arts and around communities there. But I noticed how there were so many different poetry communities in Edinburgh, and I was like, look, it's time to make friends. So I went on Google, went on Facebook, started looking for all these different things, and then I came across that slam. And I'm like,
oh, so you didn't travel there for read?
No, it was one of those things where I was present in the country and I'm like, let me participate in this.
Ah, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So because I was that side, I was looking for different things that were happening because I wanted to basically, interact with the poetry community.
And all.
And I came across the slam, signed up. In fact, I was invited for it because I made enough friends who were like, oh, there's this happening. Then they were like, look, then they invited me for it to participate. So I participated and there were 3 rounds, did the thing and won.
So what piece made you?
So funny enough, the piece I did what was it called? The first poem I did was about, there's this road in Edinburgh called Leith Walk, which is really long. And it's more think of Great East Road, how Great East Road literally connects so many different parts of Lusaka, your Manda Hill, your Garden City, all that stuff. So I wrote a poem, basically, I observed how there were a lot of old people there. And I was like, look, imagine somebody who's given a walk on Leith Walk every single day by their daughter because they love them. It's just a matter of showcasing how much I love this person. They've been there all my life. So if they're going to walk on Leith Walk with me, I'll walk with them. But the thing is that the grandmother or the old person in this poem had dementia. So they would always forget. But for the young person, the daughter or the granddaughter of this particular person, they will just keep doing it. They'll keep walking with their grandmother up and down Leith Walk, despite the grandmother forgetting. And what I found so interesting was after the slam, there were some people who came to me saying like, your poem really, resonated so much because there are so many people who there have dementia and have, similar experiences. I had some people were talking about like my brother literally, is like this. So I think for me, what that experience taught me is like, I'm not going to go to a whole other country and then share a poem which would only be relatable in Zambia. You know what I mean? It's like I'm in this space. So how can I still communicate a message of loving each other and, being able to commit even at your own inconvenience and disadvantage in a way that resonates with the people there. So looking around, learning about the community just through observation and then sharing that poem, and just so happened to help me win. And I think the last poem I did was only 6 words because that was the requirement. Yeah.
So on this one, can I ask you to say the 6 words?
Okay, sure. Do I remember the exact 6 words? I think I might not get the exact 6 words because but I think the poem was okay. When he woke up, the mortician fainted. That was literally the poem. Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to understand the metaphor.
A mortician is like someone who works in a morgue.
Yes. Then he fainted. So a dead person woke up and then, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pretty much.
Yeah. So when that happened, you in Scotland and the news is received. So who shared the news that you had won?
So it's that kind of thing where you share it in a couple of groups on WhatsApp, like, yo, this is what's happening. Next thing you're seeing it on Facebook and on Daily Mail and on Kalemba and on okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think for me, it was like a really proud moment to see how people were able to just like celebrate that particular achievement and the like. So yeah, I think it just caught fire from there.
So are the videos like available on YouTube and
on that should be the Edinburgh Literary Salon YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome stuff. Look, so you had that happen. Did it in any way open doors for you to do more in terms of, remember you mentioned that you had founded Color Culture.
Yes. So with that, I established a relationship with the Edinburgh Literary Salon. And for me, one principle that I went with that side is if I get an opportunity and it doesn't resonate or it doesn't trickle down to the people around me, then it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for me, it's like every single opportunity I'm getting, like, oh, I've traveled here, I've met these people. How is it making sense to the creative industry in Zambia or to my fellow poets? So whilst I was there, I basically established that relationship with the Edinburgh Literary Salon. And in a few weeks, just before leaving, I had a Color Culture show that side, which was entitled Twaano, where we got to talk about Zambian stories over there. And even got to meet other people who I think I actually interacted with a Zimbabwean poet who's based that side. Very cool guy. So there was that relationship that I built. I also built other relationships with poets that side. And through Color Culture, we held poetry classes with the people that side who are now teaching Zambian poets about just their perspective on writing poetry. Later on, there's a festival which we participated in virtually called the Spit It Out Festival. With that one, I hit them up like, yo, got Zambian poets this side. Think they'll be great on your platform. And they were like, sure. So that should have been last year. Yeah. Okay. When we had different Zambian poets who participated in the festival virtually. Most of the interactions have been virtual because of, the different limitations of travel and the like. But after that, for me, my goal is how can I foster this relationship to still make sense to the poets here? And I got to also participate in 2 anthologies. One which has just been released, another which is on the way, which has different Scottish writers. And just I think a week ago from the recording of this podcast, I was also participating in the launch of that particular podcast, the launch of the anthology which I had featured in, and got to share some poems which also brought in the aspect of different Zambian experiences. Yeah. So I think for me, it was like, look, you've got these different relationships. How can you be able to, bring somebody else up, or at least give them an experience they never had before? Because that's what other people did for me. There are so many poets who went ahead of me and gave me a shot, and believed in me. And that's how I came to this point. So how can I do that for others?
So I know the vision for Color Culture is being able to tell African stories globally. Is that happening?
So I guess we're still on the way of that, towards that. I think through the things that we've been doing so far, because we've mostly been engaged in poetry, we've been able to tell different Zambian stories at the scale that we've been operating. But I think of late, I kind of had this different perspective of storytelling where I was like, look, poetry is a tool. It's not the end. It's not about the best poetry platform, you know what I mean? Or a global poetry platform. No, it's about the storytelling. And I think that's something that I was really trying, like my mentor was really trying to get in my head, So like, I think with that, the decision to now expand the way we tell our stories came in. And the first project in which we now decided to do that was the short film that we got into, that we co-produced, which was Twaano. So from there, it now became more apparent that we are telling African stories regardless of the medium. And from that stage, it's now a matter of how can we grow from here? So it's like, yes, yeah, doing poetry, and that's great. But like, there's only so much you can achieve with poetry. Don't stop doing it. But how can you be able to maintain the vision whilst still using other tools?
Okay. So, awesome. So you spoke of Twaano. When it was recently released and it was premiered at the cinema, New Metro Cinemas. Walk us through what Twaano is all about.
So Twaano is, first Twaano is Tonga for stories.
Okay.
And it's basically an anthology of 3 Zambian stories. One of a depressed woman who's finding healing through traditional dance. The second of a freedom fighter finding justice from our oppressors. And the final one being a college student who is battling anxiety after a friend passed away. So the idea behind this was to change a narrative that exists within, the African context, that mental health is new to Africans, or it's new to Zambia. But that's not true. You know what I mean? Issues to do with mental health have always been a part of Zambian culture and history. Yeah. And this is where the vision or the idea of color culture really now starts to be like, pew, 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 because you start to see like, look, in Tumbuka culture, they had their way of navigating mental health.
Yep.
In the colonial era, mental health was also something that was a big part of the segregation that was taking place between the Africans and the non-Africans. And then in the modern times, we have these different experiences pertaining to mental health. So with Twaano, we looked into telling these different stories to showcase that, look, depression is not something that was just discovered in the last 4 years. You know what I mean?
When it blew up.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's actually an experience that was there in the past, and the Tumbukas had their way of approaching it. And I will admit that a good part of the inspiration of thinking in this way, of looking into our African stories, was the work I was doing with the Women's History Museum, where you get to see that there are so many things that are not new to Zambians, you know what I mean? Yeah. But, and I think the importance of showcasing the fact that these things are not new is to give us a more, to help us identify with ourselves more and to be more proud of that identity, because it's one thing to be like, oh, we believe that this is how we should approach things and this is how mental health should be navigated. But it's another to be like, look, we knew this. and you're just helping us, in terms of enhancing our knowledge and the like. So I think with Twaano, the whole message is, first of all, that mental health, navigating through mental health is nothing new to Zambia. It's nothing new to Africa. And also that you are not alone in the kind of different experiences you have. Because after the premiere, we had different people who were talking about, through a survey that we did, who were talking about how the film really showcased that their personal experiences are not just their own, They could see the characters go through things that they could relate with. And it gave them hope to see that the characters in that film were able to overcome those different struggles, or at least had a form of coping, or at least navigating those particular things. So in the end, it's more or less like, what's the impact of this? The impact of the film being that you have young people who now see that, look, I'm not alone, and this is nothing new to my culture. It's nothing new to the country that I live in. So it is something that I can be able to overcome, and something that I can be able to push through. So yeah, that's the one.
Okay. You had amazing collaborations. I know you had Ludo Fresh.
Yes.
You had Destro.
Yeah.
As well as partner Hivos coming in on board. Walk us through, how was it? Because look, I'm thinking you have your own perspective on things. The others have their own perspective. You view culture, or when you read through the Tumbuka people, the Bembas, how they dealt with different. So now you're dealing with a whole bunch of people in different opinions. How did that go? Okay,
so the project was initially a collaboration between Color Culture and Tab Production Studios. And when we met, or at least when we discussed the idea, it was more or less like, look, this is the idea. Would you be willing to collaborate with us so that we can be able to pitch this to Hivos and be able to get funding for it? Because Hivos are the ones who funded this project. So Hivos was basically looking for projects that changed the narrative in Africa and, offered a different perspective on different things. So through the collaboration between Color Culture and Tab Production Studios, we were able to pitch to Hivos, and having pitched to them, we were able to, I guess, convince them that this film was worth funding and worth them being able to give us the resources to do it. So as far as different perspectives are concerned, I think everyone was really on board from the get-go. Like where we worked with Destro, for example, as one of the voice actors. He basically voiced the colonizer, like one of the colonial officers in the colonial era. And we had Ludo Fresh, who was a performer at the premiere. And everyone basically aligned with the whole story. Because I remember when I was sharing, because Ludo was meant to like perform a piece that was in line with one of the 3 stories. And when I shared with her the story that she would be writing about, she just sent me crying emojis. And I'm like, okay, I guess it's a good story.
Go ahead.
You know what I mean? And that story basically, I think, resonated with her so well that she wrote a piece to actually, really embody the character that was in the film. So now, as far as different perspectives are concerned, I think we're all aligned. We all agreed with the aspect of how, look, this is a story that needs to be told. This is a perspective we need to see. And if anything, in Zambian media today, we don't necessarily see so much of these kinds of discussions. Yes, we do have the conversations in conferences, in talk shows and the like, but I don't know how well they've penetrated the media that we consume. So I think with Twaano, wanted to also just shift that and say like, look, this is something that happened and, is happening. So how can we best approach it and best tell a story around it?
I know it premiered in the cinema. So is it now available on YouTube? Where is it available now?
So it's going to be available for online viewing, actually today, as of the recording of this podcast. Okay. So it will be available for people to see online.
Okay. So on which platforms?
On YouTube.
What's the YouTube channel?
And the Color Culture Arts YouTube channel.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So hopefully the reach will be bigger and greater, because I know the cinema release is limited to a specific number of people. So awesome.
I think with the cinema release, it's basically to also showcase how this is not necessarily a project we want to treat in a small way. It's like, it's one thing to be like, okay, we did the film, throw it on YouTube, but it's like, look, we want to ensure that you guys have an experience of this film. Were fortunate enough that we sold out a week before the actual premiere, which was very interesting for us. Like, dang, I remember I was talking to my partner, Tabs. I was like, we only have like 4 seats left, and that was like, I think on the actual day we sold out. And it's that thing where, you're selling and you're like, wait a minute, we're actually about to run out of seats. And it was really exciting to know that Zambians really do want to watch these kinds of productions. And it was also encouraging because, there's an audience out there that's interested in these kinds of stories and these kinds of films. So, it's all about how can we be able to keep doing this more often and tell the right stories.
Awesome stuff. Look, be remembered. What would you want to be remembered as? When all is said and done, looking at, I know many times as people, more so young people, we look at it and say, hey, I still need to do more. Yeah. But yet we forget that we have done
exactly
massive stuff. Of course, by God's grace, by His grace, when we see more days, we'll be able to do big and better things.
Yeah.
What would you want to be remembered as?
As at the recording of this podcast, I would want to be remembered as someone who ensured that every opportunity that came his way was not just relevant to him.
Yeah.
Because I think I understand that I've been given the background, the skills, the talent, the knowledge, the different things that are at my disposal to be able to enrich and edify the lives of others, to be able to be a guiding light and just support in whatever way I can. And I'm grateful that God placed these different gifts within me. And for me, it's like, I want to just be remembered as somebody who did everything he could with what he had to ensure that, people were blessed with the different things that are out there. They learned, they grew, they were convicted, they were provoked, they were challenged. And in the end, to know that something came out of everything that I did. And it wasn't just relevant to me. It wasn't just, you got to, have this number of likes on Facebook, or you got to do all these little different things. Because in the end, it's like, if I can do all these things and it means nothing to the person next to me, then what's the point of doing them?
Awesome. And I almost forgot. So Color Culture, is it like closed up or anyone can sign up and join?
So I think with Color Culture, how we work basically is on a project basis.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily like, we've got membership. You know what I mean? It's a community. First of all, if you're a poet or a writer, we have a community where different writers and poets interact. And then beyond that, when we have different projects based on the people who we would want to work with and who are skilled or talented in those particular areas, we then do reach out and collaborate with different people. Because it's not necessarily like, I'm a member of Color Culture, so I'm going to do this and that. No, it's project based. It's literally just when we're up to something, we'll hit you up.
Okay. So, Awesome. Good to have you on the Umubanga podcast.
Thank you for having me.
The award winning.
Didn't even talk about that, right? But anyway, it's all good.
Yeah, well, we did touch on a few slams and so look, you've had a journey worth emulating, and honored to be able to document you and be able to share your story to the rest of the world, because now we compete on the global stage. So whatever we put out is viewed by everybody in the world. So awesome. I'm looking forward to watching Twaano online, and awesome, amazing stuff. Anything you'd want to share with somebody watching this? Maybe you have some few bars to...
I wasn't prepared for that.
Well, if you're not prepared, that's fine. And I'm just asking, maybe there's something in the vote where you're just like, I always wanted to release this one.
Really? I see. I think for me, it's really just about doing whatever you can with what you have in your hands, and ensuring that, you have a story to tell afterwards. And not being discouraged by the different things that may happen around you, but believing that everything that you have within you is enough for you to make an impact. Because, I might take a bit long. One last thing.
Sure.
A lot of us think, no, if I just have this one extra thing, no, if I have an extra nankan, if I meet this person, but then we always ignore what's already around us, and I personally have had that struggle where I constantly think my progress is in the next meeting, it's in the next skill, it's in the next what. But when you start with what you have, when you appreciate where you are, and you start from where where you are, I think there's so much progress that you can actually make. And it makes you really realize that you are more blessed than you think.
Yeah.
So, those will be my final words.
Awesome. That sounded like a sermon. Like, Moses, what do you have in your hand? I have this rod. It will turn into a snake.
Exactly.
Awesome. Glad to have had this conversation. And looking forward to many more.
Definitely.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Umubanga podcast with me, Dennis Mubanga Kabwe. Hopefully you have been greatly impacted, and do make sure to watch Twaano. It's out. Let's celebrate the many stories, the many great things happening in our lovely nation of Zambia. So from me, Dennis and Musenga, we say bye.
Check you out.